President Trump is using the economy as a political weapon. He's been saying that tariffs are about leveling the playing field, that there's a trade imbalance, and that the United States is being ripped off by other countries. In the case of Brazil, that is not true. President Trump yet is imposing a 50% tariff on the country. The reason, you ask? A court case against former President Jair Bolsonaro.
President Trump just unleashed a trade war bombshell, targeting Brazil with a devastating blow.
Probably because of the relationship that we have, Brazil and the United States have never been.
On Wednesday, Trump sent a scorching letter to Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, threatening a crippling 50% tariff on Brazilian goods starting August 1, 2025. Posted on Truth Social, Trump raged that Lula's government is waging a witch hunt against Brazil's former president, Jair Bolsonaro, demanding it end immediately. Brazil's fighting back, vowing to slap matching tariffs on American goods and redirect its steel and copper exports to Europe and Asia, leaving U.S. industries in chaos. Smash that like button to dominate the YouTube algorithm. Unlike the 21 other nations hit by Trump's tariff letters this week, the U.S. ran a $6.8 billion trade surplus with Brazil last year, exporting more than it imported. Top American exports to Brazil in 2024 included aircraft fuels and industrial machinery, according to U.S. Census Bureau data. A 50% Brazilian counter tariff could crush these sectors, driving up prices for American consumers. Brazil's goods have faced a baseline 10% tariff since Trump's April reciprocal tariff announcement, now extended to August 1st after a 90-day negotiation period. President Lula stood firm, declaring on X, "Brazil is sovereign and won't tolerate foreign interference." He promised swift retaliation under Brazil's economic reciprocity law, threatening 25% tariffs on American goods like cosmetics, electronics, and vehicles. Brazil's also redirecting its $30 billion steel and copper export market to EU and Asian buyers at pre-tariff prices, outmaneuvering American suppliers. This isn't just a trade spat, it's a global shakeup, leaving U.S. markets reeling. If you're shocked, hit that subscribe button to stay in the know. Trump's tariff threats are a familiar tactic to strong-armed nations. Earlier this year, he slapped 25% tariffs on Colombia, escalating to 50% over deportee refusals. Brazil now faces similar pressure, with Trump linking tariffs to its trial of Bolsonaro, accused of plotting a coup in 2022. Lula's government is undeterred, leveraging trade agreements like Mercosur and BRICS to shift steel and copper to Europe and Asia. This bold pivot is rewriting global supply chains. The stakes are enormous. The U.S. imported $25 billion in goods from Brazil in 2024. Including 15% of its steel and 10% of its copper. A 50% tariff could spike prices for American cars, construction, and electronics. Brazil's response is seismic. In May 2025, its non-U.S. exports surged 7.2% to 40 billion reais, with steel exports to Germany up 42% and copper to China up 38%. This shift is sidelining American industries, leaving consumers facing higher costs. Trump's letter to Lula offered an escape: no tariffs if Brazil manufactures products in the United States. He's made similar offers to 21 other nations, including the Philippines, Algeria, and Sri Lanka, with tariff rates as high as 30%. Brazil's 50% rate matches April's threat, while the Philippines faced a higher 20% and Sri Lanka saw a lower 15%. Trump claims a letter means a deal, but negotiations have stalled, with few countries sealing trade agreements. Brazil's strategic pivot is shaking global markets. In Brussels, EU negotiators locked in Brazilian steel contracts, bracing for American price spikes. China and Japan followed, securing copper at pre-tariff rates. This embeds Brazil deeper into global supply chains, marginalizing U.S. producers. Energy markets are feeling the heat, too. Steel and copper production are power-intensive, and Brazil's hydroelectric grid gives it a cost advantage, potentially cutting American Midwest oil demand as production shifts south. On Wednesday, Trump escalated further, announcing a 50% tariff on copper imports, citing national security. "Copper is critical for our Department of Defense," he posted on Truth Social, This 50% tariff will rebuild America's copper industry. The U.S. imports 50% of its copper, with Brazil supplying 10%. Copper prices soared 13.3% on Tuesday to $5.72 per pound, a record high, before dipping 2.9% Wednesday. Analysts are skeptical. America's copper industry won't revive overnight, said Maria Santos, a commodity strategist at Goldman Sachs. A 50% tariff inflates costs for U.S. manufacturers and consumers, making wiring and batteries pricier. Brazil's redirecting 20% of its copper exports to Asia, with China boosting orders by 45% in June. American industries reliant on Brazilian copper face disruptions with costs passed to shoppers. Markets shuddered. On Wednesday, the S&P 500 dropped 0.9%, its worst day in 5 weeks. Shares of American manufacturers like Ford and Boeing fell 4.1% and 3.6%, respectively, as tariff fears mounted. The Dow slid 470 points, or 1.2%, and the Nasdaq dipped 1%. Asian markets opened flat, bracing for volatility. Brazil's Bovespa index rose 0.7%, fueled by its export pivot. Brazil's not just countering tariffs, it's rewriting the trade playbook. From Sao Paulo's steel mills to Minas Gerais copper refineries, Brasilia's investing 1.5 billion reais in manufacturing upgrades. Small businesses, from Paraná steel fabricators to Bahia's copper processors, are tapping Mercosur and BRICS agreements to break into EU and Asian markets. This diversification signals Brazil's defiance of American tariff pressure, strengthening its leverage in trade talks. The fallout is brutal for American consumers. Tariffs are driving up steel and copper prices, with construction costs up 6% and electronics up 4% in June. American retailers, reliant on Brazilian supplies, face shortages, forcing price hikes. Brazil's pivot to Europe and Asia is a masterstroke, with Germany importing 40% more steel and China boosting copper orders by 38%. This shift could permanently alter global supply chains, leaving American industries struggling. The next chapter hinges on August 1st, when Trump's 50% tariffs hit. If Brazil locks in its cost advantage, EU and Asian buyers may shift south for good, disrupting decades-old trade patterns. American shoppers could face 10 to 15% price hikes on cars and appliances by fall. Brasilia's 900 million reais investment in green tech and manufacturing ensures its exports stay competitive. Will Trump escalate further, or will Brazil's strategy triumph? Share your thoughts below and hit like to keep up with this trade war showdown. As American industries buckle under Trump's tariff storm, Brazil's manufacturing hubs are charging forward with a vengeance. On July 2, 2025, Brazil's S&P Global Manufacturing PMI plunged to 44.9, marking 6 months of contraction, a direct blow from Trump's 50% tariffs on steel and copper. The export orders index tanked to 38.7, the lowest since May 2020, signaling a collapse in U.S. demand. Yet, in Sao Paulo, electric vehicle component plants unveiled fresh investments, and Minas Gerais hydroelectric projects surged, drawing green tech investors eager to sidestep tariff chaos. In 2023, Brazil's industrial sector exported $28 billion in goods, anchoring its pivot to global markets and showcasing robust integration. Brasilia committed over 1 billion reais annually to research and development, fueling innovation zones in Rio de Janeiro, Salvador, and Belo Horizonte. These funds drive advances in steel alloys, copper wiring, and sustainable energy, safeguarding high-tech jobs from tariff-driven cuts. This bold move sent shockwaves through Brussels and Beijing, where trade officials scrambled to secure Brazilian steel and copper at pre-tariff prices. In late May, EU buyers locked in Brazilian supplies, fearing U.S. price spikes. Asian markets, especially China and Japan, followed, shifting from American suppliers. Brazil's production flows through a low-carbon grid powered by long-term hydroelectric deals, ensuring stable energy costs. For American manufacturers and retailers, the choices are grim: absorb crushing price hikes or navigate foreign supply chains, risking delays and higher costs for cars and electronics. Brazil's response goes beyond boosting production. In May 2025, port upgrades in Santos were fast, tracked, too deep. Water berths at Santos Port now handle vessels over 70,000 tons, with direct rail lines moving steel and copper from Minas Gerais factories to ocean carriers, bypassing U.S. routes. In 2023, Santos moved 800,000 tons of cargo, cementing its role as a global trade hub. This corridor slashes shipping times, letting EU buyers secure goods at pre-tariff prices. Expanded intermodal yards meet Europe's strict low-emission standards. Traders in Brussels and Tokyo rush to book Brazilian slots when U.S. steel prices spiked 1.3% in June 2025. American manufacturers watch helplessly as competitors tap Brazil's efficient ports. Local communities cheered new jobs at docks and rail yards. Environmental groups praised the shift to electric-powered cranes and reduced trucking emissions. Brazilia's strategy proves infrastructure can outmaneuver political firestorms. As shipping season intensifies, Santos cranes hum under Atlantic skies, reshaping global trade routes. Brazil's ports are rewriting the tariff and trade war narrative with tangible impact. In the end, Brazil turned Trump's 50% tariffs and nearly 30 billion reais in counter-duties into a strategic triumph. From a 1.5 billion real manufacturing upgrade in Minas Gerais to a bold export pivot, modern logistics and green tech are redefining supply chains. Critical question is whether this momentum can withstand the next tariff escalation. If Brazil sustains its cost edge, global buyers may permanently shift south, disrupting decades-old trade patterns and sparking the next trade battle. This pivot reverberates globally. In May 2025, Brazil's non-U.S. exports soared 7.5% to 41 billion reais, driven by a 42% surge in steel to Germany and a 38% jump in copper to China. These redirected flows softened a 12% drop in U.S.-bound shipments, averting a deeper trade slump. Small and medium-sized Brazilian firms, from Paranas steel fabricators to Bahia's copper processors, leveraged Mercosur and BRICS agreements to penetrate European and Asian markets. This diversification sends a clear message: Brazil won't be cowed by Washington's tariff tactics. By expanding its buyer base, Brasilia strengthens its industrial core and gains leverage in trade talks. For American manufacturers, the fallout is brutal. Facing 50% tariffs, they must pay record premiums or reroute supply chains, risking delays and costlier goods. As EU and Asian buyers lock in Brazilian steel and copper at pre-tariff rates, Trump's policies risk backfiring, cementing Brazil's role as a global supplier. The trade war's next chapter hinges on whether the U.S. can counter Brazil's strategic shift or lose more market share. Brazil's green tech hubs are thriving. In Sao Paulo, EV battery plants secured new funding, and Para's renewable energy projects drew investors dodging tariff pain. Brazil's industrial sector, exporting $25 billion in 2023, bolsters its diversification, signaling strong global ties. Energy markets feel the shift too. Steel and copper production are power-hungry, and Brazil's hydroelectric grid gives it a cost advantage, potentially lowering U.S. Midwest oil demand as production shifts south. Brasilia's approach transforms tariffs into a tool for resilience and diplomatic clout. Port upgrades are a game changer. Santos expanded berths and rail lines slash shipping times, meeting Europe's green standards and undercutting American suppliers. Local jobs surged, and environmental groups lauded low-emission infrastructure. This blueprint shows how logistics can sidestep political storms. Brazil's ports aren't just moving goods. They are rewriting the trade war playbook with efficiency and foresight. The stakes are colossal. If Brazil maintains its edge, global buyers may permanently shift south, upending long-standing supply chains. American consumers face 10 to 15% price hikes on cars and electronics by fall, while manufacturers scramble to adapt. Brazil's 1.5 billion real investment in export diversification are more than a trade tactic. They're a high-stakes gamble that could redefine global supply flows for years. Will Trump escalate tariffs further, or will Brazil's strategy prevail? The critical date is August 1st, when Brazil adjusts its counter tariffs. If it holds its cost advantage, global markets may lock in Brazilian goods, leaving American shoppers with pricier cars and electronics. Brazil's pivot sent shockwaves through global markets. In Minas Gerais, factories hum with new investments, while Santos ports bustle with EU-bound cargo. Brasilia's playbook shows how economic resilience can double as geopolitical muscle. Markets reflected the turmoil. The Dow dropped 470 points, or 1.2%, after Trump's tariff announcements. Shares of American manufacturers like General Motors and Honeywell fell 4.1% and 3.7%, respectively, as tariff costs loomed. The S&P 500 slid 0.9%, and the Nasdaq dipped 1%, marking the worst trading day in 5 weeks. Asian markets opened flat, bracing for uncertainty. Brazil's Bovespa index rose 0.7% as investors bet on its export pivot. Brazil's response is a masterclass in strategy. By redirecting steel and copper to Europe and Asia, Brasilia sidesteps U.S. tariffs and strengthens global ties. Small businesses, from Rio Grande do Sul's metal fabricators to Pernambuco's copper refineries, are tapping new markets, reducing reliance on the U.S. This shift could reshape global trade for decades, forcing Washington to rethink its approach. Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe as we track the next twist in this global trade showdown. Thanks for watching.